This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, wait, where's the remote to that? Oh, it's right next to Tim. Had that right there. You need to turn that on real quick, Joseph, for me, please. Thanks.
Do I get to use it?
Yes, you do. As long as you don't hit yourself on the head. Like,
Oh, anybody else?
It's always like this or it becomes a weapon.
Did you only do it at the end or can you do it at the beginning?
He does it, yeah. he
I
does
want to
it.
do as much as I can.
Anytime you like. No. My virtual pen.
Tension?
That works. No weapon, there we go.
Don't throw it.
Okay, talk into your
Just
microphone.
hello, 1, 2, check, checking,
Yep, there we go.
checking.
Okay.
Hear that
You're
okay?
Check.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Port Orford City Planning Commission to order. It's 3:31. Yeah, let's have a roll call. Commissioner Head,
Here.
Commissioner Lovendall,
Lovendall here.
Commissioner Byrne,
Here.
Commissioner Rossi,
Rossi here.
Commissioner Thielen is here. I'll remind you, you don't need to push the buttons on your microphones. All you need to do is get close to them and speak into them. They should be on all the time. Are there any additions to the agenda?
Yes.
Commissioner Byrne.
I wanted to bring up a topic, and it may be more of a city council topic, but it has to do with water and planning the golf course. And I just wanted a kind of a check-in on what the latest status is for the effluent gray water.
I don't know that that's, if anybody knows that, if we can know that.
I've been talking, Commissioner Head, I've been talking to DEQ, but they haven't been able to give me a lot of details. I have a lot of the past history, the application, old emails, but she wasn't able to give me specifics on their interaction since August.
City council.
On the
The
20th.
appeal set for the hearing for city council on April 20th. So that's pretty much the extent right now until we get to that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Head, I don't know if we need to add this to the agenda, but I would like to talk about meeting minutes. Is that,
Meeting minutes are on the agenda. We'll have approval of the minutes, approval of the meeting minutes, and we can talk about the meeting minutes at that time.
okay, all matters pertaining to meeting minutes.
Then let's move on to the approval of the minutes from February 2023. That's pages 3 through 8. Are there additions or amendments to the minutes? Commissioner Lovendall.
Commissioner Lovendall, just as a matter of record, I made the nomination for Craig Phelan as chair, not Pam Byrne.
Oh, she did it in the beginning when I was here. I wasn't here at that second half and I couldn't hear the line. So that's.
Okay, anything else? I did want to just say a couple things. The verbatim minutes are not required. I see the minutes are verbatim in some instances. When it comes to recording discussion or citizens' comments, it would be most useful if the person preparing minutes would paraphrase the content. And I just did it just for example, just to show someone could correct me if this is not what we want, but in comments from the public, Mr. Johnson made some comments. There's over a page. I would say item 1 could be paraphrased as, questioned why out-of-towners have rights and to have a short-term license over residents. Number 2 could be spoke in favor of hosted home shares. Number 3 could be question fairness of unused permit. Number 4 could be questions requiring closet and short-term rental, and so forth. I won't go into detail, but we don't need transcripts of what was said.
Yeah, some of this was what he had submitted via writing, and then he only talked about a portion of it, because he had sent us an email, I think, or me, with regards to his comments before the meeting, I think right before, or shortly before the meeting, and he didn't address it all in his comments, and so that's why I put the rest of it, if I remember correctly. Because I have an email from him with regards to all of his comments.
So with regard to items that are going to be in the packet or not, is there a deadline for that to happen?
It's usually Tuesday or Wednesday before for like council meetings. That's when I have time to get it together. And if these are going to be out on the Friday before the meeting, like we had talked about, right?
For
Like,
planning commission
yeah.
meetings? I understood it was the Tuesday, a full week before the meeting. That's what I.
Pretty close,
what
yeah.
we heard last.
Yeah, we let a little bit move it here and there, but because that gives me a day or so for the packet to make.
Because we have, I mean,
It's supposed to be, right now for city council, it's the Wednesday before. The packets are done on the Friday. So, because that gives us time, and that's generally what we've been following for everything.
so the Wednesday before, that
The
would
packets
be
are due.
before the packets are due.
Mhm.
So that would be actually 8 days before the actual meeting.
No, because that's after the meeting would be, 7 days would be Tuesday before. So that would be the day, so we're talking 6 days before the meeting.
6 days. So
Yeah,
is that what it would be for our meetings too?
I think that would be the best to keep it straightforward for everyone.
We
is
should have the same
Wednesday.
for everyone, I would
Mhm.
say.
That's it, the
So-
Wednesday before.
So that would be the Wednesday before, Wednesday noon, or,
Wednesday anytime, because Thursday is when I start to put stuff together.
Okay.
So Wednesday end of business is a good way to put it.
Wednesday, end of business is the time that if an item, if we want it on the agenda, or if a citizen makes a comment, wants it to be on the agenda, it has to be in by Wednesday evening,
Yes.
Wednesday, end of business.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
This
Clarify.
email was the Sunday,
Yeah. I
so we
just
need to
remember.
be consistent. I think that would be really good.
I was asked by a certain person to put it in, so I did. So.
Anyway,
Okay,
while they don't have. to be-
Commissioner Lowenthal,
Love
excuse me, Lowenthal.
it. I think, as far as what, the minutes, they don't have to be verbatim, but they do we should expect the minutes to accurately reflect our deliberations and actions.
Mhm.
Yes,
And, as on page 14 and 15 of the document that you gave us.
yes,
So I just wanted to emphasize that.
the essence of discussions, and as well as the motions.
Right.
And the votes.
Mhm.
And I will try as chair to focus discussion for minutes and meeting effectiveness so that we don't stray off and then the minute taker has to figure out what's going on. I'll try my best to do that.
Commissioner Thielen, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sorry if I missed this, Commissioner Head. Who takes the minutes now and how is that happening? Has it changed?
The minutes have always, so we always have that one person, Wendy. I'm trying to remember.
But she was having trouble hearing everyone. And so I've been trying to do the best that I can to take my notes and do a combination of everything. And then taking whatever she has too, because she has times where she is missing a block of stuff. Okay. So been trying to kind of go back and forth like that. So is she, I remember there was a period where maybe she wasn't doing it. We were going to do a different thing. We had missing minutes in January and now she's back to doing it. So she's going to try to do the last city council meeting because what we did is a combination of, I had a recorder sitting right here in front of me on top of the mic. And so she's going to try to put together based upon that. And if it works for her, then we'll continue. But basically we're going to try different ways right now to see what we can get done. So these are the ones, I actually sat through this meeting and watched it online and
Ah.
stuff like that.
Okay,
So,
that's why these are so thorough and,
yeah,
yeah,
it took me,
yeah, it's
2
time
days.
consuming, right? It can't happen every month like that.
No, I don't
Okay.
have the time, but yeah, so that's what it was. So.
Okay, and the missing minutes from January, is that still happening?
I'm almost done with those.
Okay.
I've been doing them all by myself
Okay.
right now. So
Okay,
yeah,
good. Because I did research also online, there are some AI-based services that are like, can't remember, 35 cents a minute for some of them. That might give us like a backbone if we use to voice a recording, like from your phone. And then somebody who was at the meeting could go through the minutes, maybe. And fill in
YouTube does that actually too. And so
Oh, does
we,
it?
yeah, so it downloads, you can download a transcript, but if you read it, sometimes it doesn't pick up the words right. So like one word was like, the fish was at the
Yeah,
short-term rental.
it's not
I'm like,
100, not 100%.
no,
Yeah.
but it's close enough to the point where I can take it through and read my notes and get to where it needs to be.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good. And again, Commissioner Thielen, I did look up online today. I see in our charter that the minutes are supposed to be taken by a member of city staff. And I'm wondering if that, this is probably not the place to do it, but I would like to see that changed. This is in this modern age, people aren't sitting around taking notes anymore. I think that's why that was in there. But if we could outsource.
These are official minutes too. These are what I do throughout the meeting.
Okay, if we could outsource, and thank you for doing that, that's really important. And that's really, I think that's the very best.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I did see there are a number of people online who will, college graduates who do this for a living, $40 for a 2-hour corporate meeting or any meeting,
Right.
which seems like a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah, that's actually more expensive than what we pay right now. If I remember, I think we're in our 20, I think it's like 20 something right now. From the last one I looked at.
I have
Well,
a question. Also, the pricing I found was 35 cents an hour for the AI-based, not a minute, 0.0005.
Well, the number one thing is to have accurate minutes.
Mhm.
Anything else on minutes?
Just $40 a month doesn't seem very much to have accurate minute recording of what we.
Right, that's why, but that $20 per hour is based for all of our council meetings. We're talking for everything. So yeah, we're talking, it adds up, especially for the council.
So I have a question regarding minutes. Wasn't Wendy in attendance at all of the meetings? for a
Sometimes she
while?
is, sometimes she's not. She was in Tokyo for a while on vacation, I think for like a month or two. That was probably about a month ago. I think it was in January when she had said that. So I know she's here when she can be, and then she is when she's gone and she
So
can't be.
it's somewhat random.
Yeah, it is, and I don't know her schedule, so she doesn't tell me when she comes. She's just on the notices when I send them out.
Thank you.
Okay, announcements and communications. I'll speak for the chair announcement. Thanks for your support for me as chair. I'll try to do my best to see we fulfill our responsibilities to the citizens and the city. I asked Jessica to kind of put this information about our job in the packet, and I'm really glad it's there. I've been doing a lot of research on what our job is. I've been very hazy about how we actually do this job. And I think I'm a lot clearer thanks to that handbook and this other information. So, thank you.
If you want to do the minutes, then you have those changes that were suggested. That was my thought.
Oh,
So, yeah, the approval and.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So I do need to approve. So what were the changes, please? Can we have a recap of what those were?
The vote for chair was Commissioner Lovendall was the one, so that was the last page on page 8. And then you had just talked about it.
Okay, so do we have a motion to to accept the minutes as amended?
Commissioner Head, I move to accept the minutes as amended.
Commissioner Byrd, I will second.
Have a move and a second. We'll take a discussion. Let's take a vote. Commissioner Rossi,
Yes.
Commissioner Head,
Yes.
Commissioner Lovendall,
Yes.
Commissioner Burnett,
Yes,
Commissioner Thielen's a yes. Thank you. And do we have comments from the Assistant City Planner?
Not right now, no.
Comments from the public on agenda items only. Do we have any public, anyone online that would like to make a comment? Okay, if not, public hearing, we don't have a public hearing today. As far as planning matters, we have Planning Commission housekeeping. So we have Robert's Rules of Order, which are very handy. And it basically just, my interest in having the Robert's Rules on here was so that things don't get out of hand and discussions get complicated for minutes and just for tracking the meeting. So only one thing at a time, only one motion can be discussed at a time is really pretty important. Also, everyone has the right to participate in the discussion if they wish before anyone else may speak a second time. So, yeah, I'm not going to go into them. If we need to, we can resort to them. But I think we all have at least a passing acquaintance with them. So that was number one. Number two, the Planning Commission from the Charter, the Comprehensive Plan, and the Oregon Planning Commissioner Handbook are kind of a discussion. They kind of go together. They're kind of information for us to kind of guide us in how we do what we do. And I wanted to put these on the agenda and I wanted to just read through a couple things that are here just to help define our role. First, from the attachment A from the statewide planning goal of the comprehensive plan, citizen involvement. It's on page
14 at the bottom.
14 of the total thing. So the documents in our packet are numbered at the top. The bottom is the number for each document in each document. So the city goal, provide opportunities for citizen involvement in all phases of the planning process. City policies, number one, the Planning Commission shall serve as the city's officially recognized committee for citizen involvement. Now think about that for a second. It's pretty awesome. The Planning Commission shall serve as the city's officially recognized committee for citizen involvement. And I want to make sure that we are the place where the citizens can come and express and get involved. We're citizens, and we're also a conduit for citizens to be involved in the city. I think it's a pretty great role. And I just wanted to list the one under 2A, citizens will have opportunities to assist with data collection, plan preparation, et cetera. So citizens have opportunities to do things. And I'm going to be later today asking for citizens to help do some things. I wanted to say that. Statewide planning goal number 2, land use planning. On page 15, the plan number 2, the Planning Commission will review the comprehensive plan goals and policies, the zoning ordinance, and other plans that are relied upon by the city from time to time. The review will help determine where amendments are needed. So we're supposed to keep our eyes open, see what needs to be done, and make a recommendation to the city council. And look at things, turn over stones, and see what we can fix. We're here to help the city be a good thing.
So question on that.
Yes.
In terms of the, where those happen, is that generally additions to the agenda or anything that is submitted prior to the agenda being created.
I would say it would be beneficial to have an agenda item on the agenda, on the written agenda. It could be added on the agenda. It's going to be my practice to regularly ask for either for this meeting or for the next meeting, to ask if anyone has suggestions, like I have. So there is an agenda item. If you have suggestions, so there will be a place for that. This isn't going to be a one-time thing.
Right.
This is going to keep going on. That's my wish. And we'll be working with the city council. We'll either be working at their direction or we'll be bringing things to them, working with them. So that's my goal. So that's the comprehensive plan. The planning commission from the charter on page 11 of our agenda is the planning commission. Let's see, going to powers and duties. Here we are, powers and duties, page 12. Our powers or duties, recommend
2.6.060.
2.16.060A. You'll see a lot of recommending here, because that's basically what we do. Recommend and make suggestions to the city council and to all of the public authorities concerning laying out and widening, basically roads, streets, that sort of thing. B is recommend to the city council and all of the public authorities plans for regulation of the future growth, development, and beautification of the municipality in respect to its public and private buildings and works, streets, parks, grounds, and vacant lots. And plans consistent with the future growth and development of the city in order to secure the city and its inhabitants sanitation, proper service of utilities, harbor shipping and transportation facilities. C, recommend to the city council and all public authorities plans for promotion, development, and regulation of industrial and economic needs, etc. D, do and perform. Now here's a do and perform all other acts and things necessary to proper to carry out the provisions of Oregon state law. That would be the quasi-judicial hearing aspect of our job, which is really the only time we actually make a judicial decision. And I was hoping Shayla would be here.
She's online.
Oh, she is?
Yeah, she's online.
Yes.
And behind us, underneath us.
Okay. Shayla, and is Crystal also?
No, Crystal's not on.
Oh.
She did not.
Okay.
This is not even here.
Okay, great. Shayla, please interrupt me or correct me if I go off bounds here. E, study and propose in general such measures as may be advisable for promotion of the public interest, health, moral, safety, comfort, convenience, and welfare of the city and of the area of the urban growth boundary. So those are our powers and duties. Just wanted to, and most of it's advisory. Most of it's making recommendations. I will admit I've been on the PC for about 2 years and I'm just starting to figure out what we're doing here. So I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit of stuff in this really great Oregon Planning Commissioner Handbook, which has helped me a lot understand. It looks like there are 3 kinds of decisions in planning. We have quasi-judicial land use decisions at formal hearings. The quasi-judicial decisions, I'm looking on page 18 here, but I'll just read the short thing. The process is bound to result in a decision. The decision is bound to apply pre-existing criteria to concrete facts, and the action is directed at a closely circumscribed factual situation involving a relatively small number of persons. So that's the kind of land use hearing that we're kind of familiar with, and you have to have, there's certain things have to go along with that. So that's one of them. Legislative decisions is another kind of decision, and that's like the short-term rental ordinance, like the dark sky ordinance, where we make recommendations. The planning commission makes recommendations. We're not actually making a binding decision. And then the third kind of decision is ministerial, where the planning staff are implementing existing zoning rules, planning documents, and so forth. And the planning commission is not involved in that. That's not part of our area. On page 18, if you look at page 18, there's a chart that talks about the legislative, quasi-judicial, and ministerial. It's a really great chart. It's really helped me to understand what's going on.
Can I interrupt? for
Oh, I'm
just a second?
sorry.
Commissioner, yeah, I'm lost.
Thank you.
34. of the
34.
packet.
Page
Yeah.
34.
Thank you.
I actually printed this out. And so, thank you. So the kinds of decisions and their characteristics. So who makes the decision? In the legislative, elected officials make the decision. So the elected officials adopted the dark sky ordinance. The planning commission made a recommendation. Quasi-judicial, I'm still looking at that top line. Who makes the decision? The staff, hearings officer, or planning commission. So that's one of the ones where we have this real strict rules about who we can talk to and all that stuff. So the planning commission does make a decision on that. Ministerial, the staff will make a decision. And if you look down in the middle, it says action required. So legislative kinds of things like the short-term rentals or the dark sky or that sort of thing, there's no requirement that they do anything. And that's why it's not restricted to, we can't talk about things. It's kind of open territory. Quasi-judicial action required, yes. So it has constraints on contacts and so forth. So at the bottom, it says decision maker considerations. For legislative, no limit on contracts. State ethics laws apply. For quasi-judicial, no bias or actual conflicts. So we can't be appear to have bias when we go into one of these hearings. We have to be super neutral. We have to at least appear neutral and be neutral, have an open mind, and so there aren't any issues. Ministerial, there's no limits on contacts. So the staff, the planning staff can work with whoever they need to get things done. So on page 37 of this book, which I'm sorry, I do not know the page that's on.
52 of the packet, 52 of the packet, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Page 52 of the packet is the description of the quasi-judicial action. And I'm going to read it. It's about a third of the way down on the left column on that page. A quasi-judicial action is a legal action that involves the application of pre-existing criteria to specific properties. This type of action can be contrasted with legislative actions, which involve the creating policies and laws, and with ministerial actions, which involve routine administration of clear and objective requirements. So there again are those three things. And I'd like to, on the page before that, which would be page 51, thank you, is the explanation of this ex parte contact, which comes into effect sometimes. So ex parte contact is contact outside of a public hearing or review conference in a land use case by a member of the decision-making body and by someone wishing to directly or indirectly influence the outcome of the case. This does not apply to legislative or policy issues such as code amendments, nor does it apply to pre-hearing contact with staff. So that's just another, so the ex parte stuff happens when we're doing this when we're doing the quasi judicial stuff. And we have to be really careful about that. Jayla always briefs us really well on that. And so that's really important. Now, how am I doing? Am I doing okay? Jayla? Thank you.
Commissioner Thielen, I have a question. Commissioner Head.
Yes.
Under what situation would the planning commission serve as a quasi judicial body? Because aren't hearings usually conducted by the city council?
No.
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 So I can answer that, or Shayla can. When we have a hearing, when we have a land use hearing, when we have,
Mhm.
the notice goes out around to all, everybody comes in, we have 2 meetings,
Mhm.
first reading, that's a quasi judicial.
That happens with the planning commission as well?
Yes.
But that didn't happen for building heights. That was the city council.
That's
Hearing, wasn't
because the planning commission refused to deal with it,
I see.
and it went directly to the city council.
Okay.
If I could put it in so many words.
I think that's right. I'd have to double check with you. A
Yeah.
lot of it started before I started, so I
Mhm.
wasn't here.
I'm trying to just recall in the last several years, any instance where
The conditional use permit for 1602 and 1603, when we just heard last time, was a,
okay, that was a hearing?
That was a land
that
use.
was a
Okay.
land use.
Okay.
So a quasi judicial type of process in front of the planning commission is usually when it's an individual applicant who desires to do something with their property that isn't an outright allowed use in the code.
Right.
So it could be a partition or a subdivision or, a certain type of structure in a certain type of zone in which it's a conditional use type permit. Those type of things are quasi judicial that come before this body for decision.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the clarification. That's helpful.
Thank you,
Mhm.
thank you. And then would I also categorize that with, so how would a zoning change, would that be quasi judicial?
Yes, if it were just individual parcels of land, it would be quasi judicial. If it was an entire area that you wanted to change the zone of, that would be more legislative. But it would still involve a hearing and notice and all those things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, wow, so far so good. So this, and I have some notes here just to clarify my own thoughts. The short-term rental ordinance, which we're dealing with, is a legislative type, obviously, because nothing has to happen. And one question that's come up is if the planning commission can make reports and have back and forth communication with the city council when we're doing this legislative type stuff. On page 17, oh my God, I'm sorry, page 17, whatever that is.
Of Commissioner, the handbook?
Yes.
So that's on page 32 of the packet.
So on page 32 of the packet and on page 17, you'll see build a better commission. Over on the right, towards the very bottom, number 12 and number 13. Number 12 says, appoint a commission representative to appear before the elected body when it is necessary to explain or sell an action. Don't expect staff to do your job. And number 13, lobby for good planning. If you don't, or if you won't, who will? Which leads me to believe that the lines of communication between the city council and the planning commission are fairly open or are open, except in the cases of the quasi judicial. Is that true?
That's accurate, yes.
Yes, thank you. And I've had this question before. Can city council members attend the planning commission meetings if they're not the quasi judicial type?
Yes, they can attend the planning commission meetings so long as there isn't an application in front of the planning commission that day.
As long as there's not an application in front of the planning commission, that would be a quasi judicial.
Yeah, so that day. So, yeah, so like the
That-
hearing that we just had.
Correct.
So
Thank you.
That's where that would be the difference.
Thank you. I think that's good. So I'm gonna just moving on. So as I understand, the city council answers to the voters. The planning staff works for the city administrator. And planning is essentially working for the citizens under the city council and can only make recommendations except in quasi judicial hearings. And it's taken me 2 years to kind of figure this out. I don't know if I'm there yet, but. So the planning commission is an authorized group of citizens giving input to planning and council. And to be honest, there's moments I've been confused when something the commission has wanted, but wasn't put in a draft by city planning. But I understand we are not the planning department. We're not writing the ordinance. So planning doesn't have to adopt everything we propose. But in time, when planning finishes an ordinance and it comes back to us for a recommendation to council, that's when the commission looks at the puzzle and see if all the pieces we wanted are there, and then we vote accordingly. Kind of how it looks like it works. This is another reason that accurate, complete minutes need to be provided to us so we can double check our work. Another issue that was raised in the handbook is bias. And as commission members, we need to be careful not to show bias in our quasi-judicial decisions. Social media has changed how we are able to interact with large groups of people, and I don't think Oregon rules have changed to reflect that yet. But I would not like to see the commission members posting comments about something on social media that later came to us in a quasi-judicial hearing and have a commission decision be successfully challenged because a vote was seen as being biased. So one of our jobs, I think, is just to keep an open mind. And that's all I have to say on that section of housekeeping. Are there any questions, or do you want to add anything? Then next we go to short-term rental ordinance review from the workshop and council meeting decisions. Oh, election of, sorry, that is on, that was on, not on my hand wrote. We have number 5. Which is election of the vice chair and secretary. Oh, that is important. Thank you. Do we have a nomination for vice chair?
Commissioner Rossi, I nominate Pamela Byrne.
Is there a second?
I second Commissioner Lovendall.
Discussion? Then I call for the vote. Commissioner Head?
Yes.
Commissioner Lovendall?
Yes.
Commissioner Barron?
Yes.
Commissioner Rossi?
Yes.
Commissioner Thielen is a yes. And thank you for doing that. And the secretary, we ordinarily elect a secretary who's a member of the city staff. They're a non-voting member, but they're here giving us some good advice. So do we have a nomination for secretary?
Commissioner Byrne.
Commissioner Byrne?
I would like to nominate Jessica. Sorry, I'm taking my notes.
Sorry, can I have a bit of clarification?
Yes.
Commissioner Head, does it have to be a member of city staff, or can it be a member of the planning commission?
I think it probably could be a member of the planning commission, but yeah, I think it probably could be.
Shayla, what are the rules on that? Because my understanding was staff, but I'm not quite sure. That's what Patty had always told me.
Yeah, it's generally been staff. I don't know if that's actually written in a resolution or ordinance by the council, but it's generally been a person who is city staff because they're in charge of assisting with the minutes.
I think in the ordinance, it says a member of planning, but Jessica is technically a non-voting member, so.
Well, the person wouldn't have to be a voting member to be a secretary. They're ex officio member. That's common with boards. You know, executive secretaries, and they do the dirty work for us.
And it's like, the same thing goes for city council, like I'm under the non-voting member, me and obviously Mayor Cox, but
I think it's logical since Jessica is the one who is taking notes, and that is one of the roles of the secretary. Minutes or notes. So we have someone else who is transcribing the minutes. Seems like a logical role.
Any discussion on that? Is there a second?
Commissioner Rossi, I second the nomination of Jessica Ginsburg.
Any other nominations?
Commissioner Head, I was going to nominate Sarah as a secretary. But if the secretary has to be a member of the city staff, then obviously that wouldn't work.
I'm at a loss.
It's an interesting dilemma.
I move that we table this pending further clarification on whether it has to be staff. Can we do that?
I agree.
If you have a motion and a second on the table, you need to vote.
We need to vote.
Thank you.
We need to vote. So all in favor of Commissioner Byrne, or excuse me, of Jessica Ginsburg? Excuse me, that's not how you do it.
Sorry,
I'm just
Commissioner
learning.
Feeling.
I'm just learning, folks. Commissioner Head,
Can we table the motion?
it needs
No.
to, if that needs to happen, it needs to be rescinded.
Rescind
Both
the-
the second and the first, and then a motion to table needs to be made.
Okay, I'm
Okay,
Commissioner
so-
Head. Yeah.
Commissioner Byrne, I will rescind the nomination of Jessica Ginsburg as secretary pending further research as to whether or not it needs to be a staff member or if it could be a planning commissioner.
Commissioner Rossi, I rescind my second.
I think as chair, am saying we need to have a secretary. So we need to vote on this now. I don't want to have a meeting and not have a secretary.
Have we ever voted on a secretary in the past?
We have always voted on the
Okay.
secretary, yes.
So I have a question. Are there other staff members of the city that could be nominated?
So eventually Joseph is going to be taking over some of the planning, but the training is not there yet. And there's different certifications that have to be done for recorder type, for the recorder. So until that is done, but eventually, that's why he's attending today. We'll start to do those things, but
Commissioner Head, can we appoint an interim secretary until we're able to research the code? Just for this meeting until next month?
I think we could probably do that. Shayla, do you want to weigh in on this at all?
So I can read to you what the code online says. I feel like this was updated at some point in time and to deal with the city staff being the secretary. But I'll read to you what it says. It says the secretary shall sign plats and other official documents of the planning commission and see that recommendations of the planning commission are forwarded to the city council. The secretary of the planning commission shall also ensure that minutes of all planning commission meetings are recorded pursuant to ORS 192-650 by a member of city staff or record such minutes personally. So I think that because the position is such a chore that it has generally been done by a city staff person. I'm not sure that that is a requirement, other than in my recollection, the city council adopted a resolution at some point in time, making that a city position. But we'd have to research that. You don't have any plats that are coming before you anytime soon.
Any what,
You know,
I'm
in
sorry?
the next 30 days or so, that would require a secretary's signature that I'm aware of. So if you did want to table it for next meeting, you probably could.
I would entertain a motion to have, to elect an interim secretary for, until the next meeting.
I move, Commissioner Head, I move to nominate Jessica Ginsburg as interim secretary.
Commissioner Rossi, I second that.
We have a movement, a second, discussion. Commissioner Head,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Lovendall, Commissioner Bernard?
Yes.
Commissioner Rossi?
Yes.
Commissioner Thielen, yes. Thank you, Jessica.
No, I'm trying to speaking out loud in my right contract.
Okay, short-term, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Short-term rental ordinance review from workshop and council meeting decisions. I think Jessica had some
Yeah.
things
the
to say
council
about
meeting.
it. Okay.
So I don't know if everyone watched the council meeting or not, or attended, but that was the 33 was the cap that they had decided on. So I don't know, that's what they had decided on, so that's what we're gonna do. I know they said that they wanted to have you guys look at the problem areas for parking. You know, I think specifically the 10 MU zone was the main focus of that conversation, because of, I think Fifth Street, to be honest, was like the main focus of that conversation.
That's the elephant in the room.
Yeah, so they had asked that you guys look into that, and see what kind of parking could be an issue, and the reason, you know, all that fun stuff, and go through. It says give city residents possibly 5 years to apply if they need to. I'm not quite sure exactly, but we need to find out what the problem really is before we can solve it, if that makes sense. And they talked a lot about, I guess there was a parking ordinance that was in a long time ago or something like that, that they had talked about. The density, so they just wanted, obviously justification for the 300 feet density, which we kind of told them, and there was only 1 or 2 spots possibly at the most that it would be grandfathered in. And then the building inspection, they just said some sort of, you know, justification, anything that you guys could find with regards to that. They suggested maybe a right-of-way permit for the parking as an option. They had brought that up at one point in time, that, you know, the landowner needed to file for a right-of-way permit. That was one of the suggestions at some point in the middle of the parking conversation.
Can I interrupt for just a second? Is this somewhere in the packet?
No, these are just my notes.
Okay.
This is just after the last council meeting when I was going through my stuff.
Okay, thank you.
So those were just kind of, I'm in the middle of transcribing the council minutes right now, so it's taking time because it was like a 5-hour meeting. So those were kind of the basic things, but the biggest things is they wanted you guys to look at, obviously, where the parking with the problem areas, and have possible solutions that can address those problem areas. So I don't know if anyone did. I know there, I think at one point there you came in and took a picture of the map or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did. I took a picture of the map so that we could, to help the
Mhm.
council, we could go and perhaps assign somebody, or we could go
Mhm.
look and come back to the council and tell
Mhm.
them what we found as far as how many
Mhm.
don't comply with the 300.
Right,
And that
okay.
was something,
300 foot was just in residential zone though.
only in residential.
Yeah,
That's
right.
correct. Okay. And then I did think that they wanted us to look, kind of review enforcement and inspection, that I could be.
Yeah,
wrong.
that's why I said building inspection right here. I said justification, so just review and stuff like that is what I wrote, because that's what they were asking about too.
So yes, and from my notes, it said the city council wants justification for inspections.
Mhm.
They wanted us to look at the 30 minutes for a contact person.
Yes.
And they wanted to look us into problem areas in 10NU and 4C.
Mhm.
And yes, and I wrote down also, they did recommend a 33 cap.
Mhm. Yeah, and the reasoning for the 30-minute, just so that you guys know, is there's a few obvious people in town that do a lot of things for the few short-term rentals. And a lot of times they do have to go out of town for, personal reasons or anything like that. We all know even going to Walmart is farther than 30 minutes away. So that was kind of the thought process. And sometimes, we are out of cell range for a little bit of time, depending on where we are. So that was the concern with the 30 minutes that was brought up to multiple council members, including myself, actually. I got a phone call about it.
I did as well from Chrissy Phillips. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so that
so-
was the reason for that one.
Mhm.
I'm assuming the city doesn't have a budget to hire someone to go around and look at the parking.
No.
So here again is what I was referencing, when the citizens get a chance to do things. So we're citizens and we know other citizens. So I'm wondering if anyone would like to volunteer to go around to the locations in the city that have been identified as having short-term rentals in 10NU and 4C and make a report back to the planning commission on what they find.
Commissioner Head, can we have two planning commissioners work on that?
I would think that would be
Yeah.
fine.
Mhm. Okay.
It's not a quorum. If two wanted to do it, I'm wondering if we could get a list, if Jessica could give us a list of the viable ones. And then I would think that probably the two things we would want to know, or three things we would want to know, would be the address,
Mhm.
is there off-street parking? And any special circumstances that you might see, just to kind of open up the door a little bit.
Mhm. Would we have to know, for example, how many bedrooms there were to gauge how many people might be staying there?
It might be useful to do that, although I don't know that that's available information. But obviously you could say, well, it looks like it's a huge house and there's one spot.
Do you have that data, Jessica, from looking on Airbnb? And
Not on, well, I don't know, because I don't spend that much time looking on Airbnb, like at specific houses. We look for ones that are not, registered. We kind of see them on a map and just go from there. I'm sure there's a way to find it on Airbnb, but if we have the planning, if when the buildings were built, we already had started doing planning documents, we should have it in there. It just depends on when and how old the buildings are.
Okay. So that would require some digging and
Mhm.
research.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not sure that that's, I mean, it would be nice to have that information. I'm not sure how much digging it's worth to do that,
Mhm.
or how much trouble it is to get that information.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that. I was just, Commissioner Head, just thinking if that information was available, it might be helpful to include. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious in some cases, not so much in others.
I would say if the information is available, let's look at it and compare if it's a 4-bedroom place, how many parking spots there are.
Mhm.
And that would be good information.
Right.
When would you like this information?
I would like it
provided
back
by?
at the next meeting.
Well, I mean, that's for the city providing it to the individuals who are doing it.
What
Because that
we
would
can
take,
do for
that
you.
would take a little bit of time to pull together.
I would just like to be able to get the information before we have the agenda for this next meeting.
Right, that's what I was just trying to say.
So
So
that
they
we
want
have
to.
a week or so to do the work.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, Commissioner Head, I would volunteer to do that.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Commissioner Burt, I have a question. So
So, just one moment. Jessica was checking her schedule. For when that might be, when we would have that information.
Okay. So I would say by Tuesday, a week from today,
Okay.
because council meeting is next week, so I'm busy all this week.
Okay, so Tuesday, a week from today, Jessica can have the information on the rental, as much as information as you can get. Don't stay
Yeah,
overnight night trying to get it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, no,
You like to do that.
whatever's just readily available.
Yeah. And then the address,
Mhm. Off-street parking situations, special circumstances,
yeah,
possibly a number.
something that we
Parking
can kind of collate into a database, into a list.
Spreadsheet or something.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and if you wanted to do a spreadsheet, that'd be awesome too.
Mhm.
It saves our staff doing it.
Yeah. Mhm, I'll
That'd
do
be
that.
awesome. And that was the main thing, that was the real thing, because this is a big problem, this is a big issue, as
is.
we all know.
Yeah.
And I think we would really help the city council if we did
Mhm.
that.
Okay.
Would anybody be interested in looking at a justification for inspections, which we have actually looked for? I mean, we've asked for, and it's not in there yet. And the city council wanted a justification for why we would want to have inspections. So I'd like someone to make a proposal.
Make a case for
Make a
why.
case, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to
Would you, Sarah, excuse me, Commissioner Lovendall?
love and doll.
Lovendall? Is it Lovendall or Lovendall? I'm sorry.
Love and doll.
Lovendall. I always wanted to say that. Okay.
It used to be Luffenthal. Anyway, I would do that.
So you would be willing to make a case for inspections, and if you look at what other jurisdictions are doing, what our attorney says and so forth, and get that to us by
Next meeting.
by the time of the agenda for the next meeting.
Mhm.
So the next meeting is April 6th, so that, I'm sorry, April 4th. So that would be, I would need it by the March 29th.
March 29th.
Mhm.
That work?
Commissioner Head, I have a comment about that, about the inspections. I know Jeff McVannell, I was considering approaching him to see if he would consider doing inspections on a contractor basis, for a fixed fee, maybe.
Mhm.
Is that something that the planning commission is interested in? Because we don't have the city staff capacity to do the inspections.
You certainly could ask him if you wanted to do it. I don't think the details of how we do these things I don't think it's beyond us. I mean, if we can make a suggestion, it
Right.
works, yes, but
Mhm.
the legal issues involved and we can't,
In contracting, yeah, but,
we can't know those
it's
things.
conceivable that the fee could come out of all this, the extra fee,
No.
the extra money that we'll be collecting.
I think in past times, the concern that council's had with different things like that, when you have someone do an inspection, and they kind of brought it up, I think, at one point in planning, is that it's a possible friend, so you have that possible situation. So they were talking about wanting to do something outside the jurisdiction, so that you didn't have that, oh, this person approved it, that type of little
Mhm. But
possible.
he does do, and he's a licensed inspector,
Right. I'm just, that's what
Yeah.
I've heard in the past, so I'm just
Okay.
relaying that information, so.
I
Yeah.
guess that would,
So you mean, is there concerns for objectivity?
Yeah, for multiple different things in the past, and so that's why there's a few different things too.
Commissioner Lovendall.
That concern in a small town,
Mhm.
I mean, this is something that I think when we have to trust that people would, we are pool, and that people will be open-minded as you're supposed to be in that capacity. So if we can work that out that's just something we have to
Yeah.
deal with.
Mhm.
I'm sure if there are inspections, it'll be something that planning will be directed to work out, or we'll figure out a way to do it.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's a lot of ways to do it, and possibly in your justification, you could list several ways that other jurisdictions are doing it that seem to work for them. I think that would be really valuable.
Mhm.
They use different people.
And then the planning could make a choice on, or the city administration could make a choice on how they want to do it. So we have the 30 minutes for the contact person. Would anybody be interested in making a case for that or investigating that at all?
I have a question regarding that, Commissioner Head. For emergencies, wouldn't dispatch be contacted if there was, say there was a ruckus or a fight or noise outside quiet hours?
Well, my question with regard to that is also with dispatch, is it, if there's a barking dog, do we call dispatch? Do we call the police? Or if there's someone's parked on the street, do we call the police? That seems to be a case to have a contact
Right,
person.
so there's a line where things are kind of emergencies and then non-emergencies, right? Barking dogs, parking problem, not emergency, fight or party after hours, emergency. Right? And then that's the way I'm thinking about it. I mean,
In most cases, wouldn't a telephone call, I mean, the person wouldn't have to come from Oak River to the house, but if it's a barking dog, wouldn't just the person that's contact person just have to make a telephone call within 30 minutes?
There you go.
That's not that hard to do, and how many, and bear in mind, I don't think we're gonna have an overwhelming amount of issues with STRs.
I think the main concern was that the way that Christy voiced it to me was that, say she's out of service, she represents a number of vacation rentals, and there's an issue that's maybe a non-emergency and a barking dog, for example, if she's not able to respond within 30 minutes because she misses the call, does the owner get fined, or what are the ramifications? So the 30-minute response time for non-emergency situations, I think really is what we're evaluating, right? Yeah, but I agree that, that there should be somebody.
Maybe they have a backup number, maybe we come
Yeah.
up with a backup number.
Mhm.
They're not able to reach it. Because on the other side of that issue is you've got a neighbor that's listening to a barking dog that they've probably been listening to for a long time, if it's a barking dog. No one's gonna die, because of a barking dog. Does that get to go on for 2 hours because someone is out of cell contact? So there's gotta be a way to work around it.
I think if a person is contracted to be on call, they need to have a backup number if they're out of service. That's part of your job.
Mhm.
I agree.
Mhm.
So Commissioner Byrne, I'd be willing to evaluate this and
You
try to
would?
get it a little bit tighter. Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
So you would be willing to look into the 30 minutes for a contact person
And,
and make a case?
and any
One way or
kind
another.
of alternative approaches. Sure.
Thank you for doing that. And then if you could please have that by March 29th,
Okay.
and turn it into the city, and we can have that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Right.
Awesome. We're making progress. Anything more on the city council piece, coming back from the city council?
Wasn't there the piece about they wanted to know how many were within that 300-foot distance? If that's an issue, which ones they were, remember? That was
Yeah.
one on their list.
Yeah, it's a justification for that to see how many there were, and then it says, should they just grandfather in? I think kind of towards the end, they were leaning more towards grandfather in, but they were wondering how many there were in total, and so I wrote justification next to that.
Is that number easy to see on the GIS map?
It's easy when you can use it, but it's not accurate. I mean, it's not 100% accurate. But you have to know where on the map, when you're looking at the different properties, what, that you're definitely doing property line and stuff like that. That's the catch.
Well, it seems, I will say my city block is 300 feet. It seems like a reasonable distance. That's the distance that they use for called block face distancing. That's what That's the only number I've ever seen, actually, is 300 feet.
Is the map still over there from when we had it up, or did they
It's,
take it
it's
down?
I think there's one rolled up on the floor. over
I
there.
just have it on my phone.
That's true, so do I actually, ha ha ha. You know, I was just trying to see it and see if we saw something that had.
So, and it's only in residential.
Commissioner Bennett?
I got a question, and I didn't have an opportunity to ask it. Do we have a list?
Do we have a list of the problem areas?
In the 10NU and as far as parking?
And 4C?
Yes. Do we have no, we were going to just give a blanket
Okay.
overview of it.
I
The problem,
wasn't-
the problem area has been discussed as Fifth Street. Well, obviously, everybody talks about Fifth Street.
Okay, here's the, looks like that's kind of like the old one. So there's the Fifth Street area, and then here's the 101. So that doesn't look like such a problem area, more so it looks like right there.
So the 300 feet,
It looks like it would be like a lake shore
Make sure.
and Arizona, not Arizona, I'm sorry, Deer Circle, because there's two on Deer Circle. That one is up for sale, that first one, year one, and then there's another one a little farther down. I'm not quite sure if that's 300 feet or not. Yeah, I'm not
but,
quite sure.
but if one of them's for sale, it won't be a short-term rental.
I don't know, it's been for sale it was for sale for 2 years and then it came back on and turned back on, it's been back and forth, so I'm not sure what the deal is right now.
But if it was grandfathered in, it wouldn't make any difference.
Right, but those are the problem areas that they were asking about. I think.
Yeah, because it's being sold, even if it was a rental, the license isn't transferring.
If it's not, yeah, if it's not, it's not. I think it's up for sale 2 years ago.
Yeah,
or a
now
year
it's
ago.
back on the
And then-
market for
yeah.
700.
Yeah.
Well, this is a great map. I think they just wanted the justification for why 300 feet is a reasonable distance as opposed to 241 feet or 320 feet.
I did want to know how many, and
Yeah.
I'd be willing to do that if I could conscript somebody to help me. Just go run around to these places.
Oh, wonderful.
I would be willing to help with that as well.
We'll help you.
You would.
Yeah.
Okay, so Commissioner Lovendahl and Commissioner Head are offering to take a look at that.
See how many are potentially would be affected by 300 feet.
I have a 100-foot tape, I'll loan you.
I have one.
You got one too?
Yeah.
It looks like it might also be Coast Park Hill and Kings, kind of just that corner.
Okay.
Or Sweetway and just that whole little corner looks like it's kind of clustered a little bit, see that?
Uh-huh.
So Coast Guard Hill,
So this is
Kingsway,
This is just in the residential, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coast Guard Hill, Kingsway, and Lake Shore, and Gear
Deer Circle, yeah.
Circle there.
King Street, south or north?
Wow.
By the, King Street, south or north?
It just says King Street on the map,
King Street.
so.
It would be King Street North.
That
That would be the one, you know, where that swing, not swing
Goes
winds,
down the hill.
something winds and it goes downhill. Yeah, there may be one.
Oh, Sweetway or whatever. Sweetway's up
Well,
there,
no,
too.
Sweetway's down the hill.
That's
Oh,
Coast
okay.
Guard Hill.
Would we
And
be
then-
able to access this map in the next couple weeks?
Well, Sarah came and took a picture of it.
Oh, okay.
She has one, I don't know how good it is. But on the sheet that you're gonna have with the Excel for the parking and stuff, you'll have the addresses in there. So they'll be
Okay.
clustered based upon where they are, like, on the street.
Right,
So you should be able to see kind of from there too.
okay.
Can we check out that map?
Yeah, this is just my lovely Sharpie drawing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Or maybe if you could bring it up to the office and could be available so we can just come in and look at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for making that map. Wonderful. So anything else on what the city council said?
Yes.
Yes,
Commissioner
Commissioner Burns.
Did the topic of licenses issued but not being used come up?
They talked about it, and I don't think that there was any issues against it. The lawfully, I think it was what, unlawfully or lawfully, whatever that clause is in here. I don't think there was anything against it. I think they all agreed to it. That's how they got to the 33 counts, because they were told how we came to that number based upon what the amount of licenses that is issued now.
Is that what you asked, or did you ask about
Well,
our
there were
licenses?
citizen concerns about licenses that were current but not being used. And so as a representative for citizens, I wanted to know if that was addressed.
So it was addressed at the workshop. In fact, we talked about a little math problem that could help solve that. I noticed in Mr. Kern's letter, he suggested that our TLT policy include a verifiable listing of the number of nights that were spent in a short-term rental, which would solve the issue if we were to have a code that said you have to have a certain number of nights. At the workshop, we said 30 nights. Was everyone kind of agreed on that? I didn't see, was that in the draft?
No, because I couldn't figure out where to put it in the draft. Because that's a whole other code in there, not code, but a whole other section, I think, that we're gonna have to address.
But that is something that the commission wants. We're clear about that?
Yes,
Okay.
Commissioner Head, I believe there was a similar section in the Hood River Code about, yeah.
So does Gold Beach. I just read Gold Beach.
Okay, so Gold Beach and Hood River both have it in their code, so maybe that'll be a clue to where it should go. Thank you. Anything else from the workshop or I had one that, so moving on to, I guess, other parts of the short-term rental code. I had mentioned before that in the good neighbor policy, that we have the note that outdoor fires are not allowed in Port Orford during much of the year during fire danger. Due to fire danger, check with the city or the fire department before outdoor burning. I would like to see that in the good neighbor policy. Is that something we all feel is important?
So my question with that is, so if they do a fire on the beach, that's not any of our jurisdiction. So we
No.
can't stop them from going out there and doing those things. So we can put it in the code, but I'm just saying that that's something that I just thought about when you said that.
Oh, well, I would say on the
On the
rental
on the
property.
farm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
on the rental property, specifically, yeah. Anything else on the short-term rental code?
Commissioner Head, did we want to talk about the cap, or are we all in agreement on that?
Do you have something to say?
Well, I don't, it was my understanding that, Councilor Pogwizd was not in support of lowering the cap from 40 to 33, so did they?
They voted on it.
They did?
The 33.
Okay.
Yeah, they voted on it.
They
and
voted
approved
on
it
it.
for
Okay.
33.
Okay,
I would actually prefer to, since we've already had some attrition, I would prefer to wait until the time we actually do the ordinance and see what that number is, if it's even less.
right, because, yeah, what my understanding is that Coos Bay has 75, and they are considerably larger, and Gold Beach has 21 in the residential, and they're approximately 4 times larger than Port Orford. So if there is any way to further reduce it, that's why I'm bringing it up. Yeah,
Well, and my idea is that we're not here to create, if there are less than 33, we're not here to create business opportunities in residential neighborhoods. We're here to just basically grandfather in what's here.
right, but we could, if we wanted to lower the number and lose some by attrition, that's also an option as well.
I feel if we're at 33 now, I think we can just wait and see. And if we want to, if it turns out there's 31, we could maybe propose it at that time.
Mhm.
But rather
Okay.
than get all too fancy.
No, I agree.
But I think as long as we're all on the same page at 33, I think we're looking good.
Commissioner Lovendall, for clarification, so we're going to go with 33, but if some by the time we make our proposal, are we gonna change it?
That's just my personal, but.
No, I know, I think it's a good person. I
We're
think it's a
making-
good idea. We should go with what we have at the time of the ordinance.
I'm in favor of that.
Mhm.
Are we all in favor of that?
Yes,
That's unanimous?
yes.
Okay, so that's unanimous, that we would like to see the number that are actually legally pre-existing at the moment of when we finish this whole thing, to be the number.
But for clarification, not higher than 33.
Not-
Yeah. Because if we end up getting a wait list, you know,
Should be possible.
yeah. Just throwing that in there, okay.
Okay. Anything more on short-term rentals?
Anything else on the comments from Daniel Kern?
Or-
Because he had a bunch of
Oh, yeah,
comments.
comments on Daniel Kearns, thank you.
Mhm.
Page 81. At the top.
There it is. Oh, yeah. In that first section, was, as I mentioned, he recommended that we also include a reporting requirement. The licensee report each year the number of nights rented. And can I ask Jessica, are we using the existing code, or are we going to go with the one he's recommending?
I don't know, I have to look at what is on top of the TLC report, because I'm not sure if they write the amount of days. I don't think that they do, but I'm not 100% sure when they submit the TLC tax return. So I have to look at that.
Do you know which way you're going to go? If you're going to go with what he's suggesting, or if the one we have is good?
I don't, that would be a city council decision. That's not for me to decide, so I have to leave that up to them.
Okay. Is that being put to them?
I think they actually saw this letter. It came before the last council meeting. I'm pretty sure this is in their packet. So I think they saw this letter. I don't know how much I don't think they even discussed it, to be honest, but I think they saw the letter.
Mhm. Do you think maybe it'd be a good thing to bring it to their attention?
I will have to look and see what the agendas look like from right now, because we already are pretty full, and I actually have a calendar out for 6 months for the agenda. So, but it will definitely be brought up. We can definitely talk about it for sure.
Okay.
I can actually put it in my administrative notes if you want me to, and then that'll bring it to their attention, and then they can decide what they want
No,
to
because
do.
it seems like if he mentioned it, it seems like it should be something we should follow up on. I think it would be. And I really want to work with the city council and get,
It doesn't seem like it would be that hard to add it to the reporting for the TLT.
well, we're talking about actually replacing the whole TLT code with a different TLT code that may be better. I think that's what we're talking about, which is,
Well,
it's a piece of work, I'm
Yeah.
sure. It's
well,
not just
maybe
something
we should come up with one, make a recommendation to the city council.
Well, I think that's just gonna happen now. It sounds like that's gonna be on their agenda.
On our full packet list is reviewing the whole code. That's
Mhm.
on our goal list. For the city council? Oh, the whole code
The
or,
whole code.
okay.
It was in our goals session that we had last week or 2 weeks.
Mhm.
If you'd
That
like
could
to
take a
have a
while.
planning commission member be there, I'd be happy to do that. I like number 3. He says, I heard mention of applying the city's noise ordinance. And it seemed really clear and straightforward what he's saying. A violation occurs if between the hours of 10 PM and 7 AM, there's any noise from an STR that can be heard at the property line. It's a very strict standard, but it is objectively clear and easy to enforce and to log a violation. I like his approach because he's straightforward. And he's evidently, these are proven ideas.
Right.
So is anyone else in favor of that?
Commissioner Head, yes?
Are we all?
Yes.
So that's a consensus also then.
Yes.
No, so we would like to have that.
Trying to keep the thing in our code already for the noise ordinance and how it's measured, so it's nothing right now.
Okay. So it looks like the short-term rental ordinance would be even more strict. So it looks like from what I'm reading, the existing noise ordinance could coexist with the short-term rental ordinance, and it would be more strict for short-term rentals. Anything else on this letter?
Yes, number 6.
Number 6?
I thought we had a discussion about if a short-term rental sold, it would not be considered a renewal, but a new license application.
That's correct.
Okay. So the last sentence, even if NSDR sells, the new owner still has to come in within a year to renew. The word renew is off-putting.
I think that's the 10, like, yeah, but it's in there as what exactly what you had said, it's put that way, so.
Anything else on this letter? Let's move on to are there any other topics? Oh, yes, identify possible topics for proposals to the city council. Do any of the commissioners have proposals for things we should be looking at, or the city council should look at, the town should be looking at?
Commissioner Head, I
Yeah.
feel like we should revisit the 10MU, the goals for the 10MU, what the vision was for the 10MU as a sort of meld of, pedestrian traffic and shops, and whether the code needs to be tightened up so that is actually executed. Because I feel like we're falling short of the vision in the 10MU.
Okay, so vision for the 10MU.
Yes, and, also in accordance with the visioning document that was created in 2006.
So vision of 10MU / visioning document.
Yeah, and yes, and the current code and what, what's currently happening there.
So Commissioner Byrne, if I may just kind of add to that, I think we had talked before about the possibility of changing some of the lines, the area lines, because of the mixed use, both residential and commercial. And so maybe that should be included in the discussion.
Rezoning.
Rezoning. Yes.
That would definitely be as rezoning. Okay, any other topics that you feel that should be worthy? I have one. Oh, I would like to put, I've had several people mention the dark sky ordinance, that there be teeth put in that. Evidently, there are scofflaws that are not following the code, and it's not good. So dark sky
More teeth.
enforcement. So that would be a amendment. Something else?
Yes, Commissioner Byrne, do we want to tackle derelict buildings and ask owners of property to set a plan in place or something along that line.
So the city council is working on an ordinance for abandoned and, dilapidated buildings, because the one that we have adopted is from 1980. And obviously it's a little old. Granted, it makes me feel
Yeah,
old
we
by
were
saying that.
working on that, but it's not a priority.
It's not a priority, but there's a lot of work that has to go behind it due to the fact that some of the properties that we've already contacted, people are no longer around, they're not answering or not. So that becomes then a very trying process and a very time consuming process. One of the owners, it took me a little over a year to track down. And that was like 15 letters and would get, oh, they moved, here's this. And then I send another and then I get, something back. So, I mean, that is a process that I think definitely needs to be buttoned down a little bit, because a lot of these properties also do have liens already on them from the city due to past due water or sewer. or
Could we
things like that.
expedite? Could we help them by moving it forward?
I would have to add, I'm not quite sure how that works because of that type of code. That would be a Shayla question, because it's a little funky,
Do you, so are you saying that maybe the code is not adequate? Or would it be the code's not adequate, or the enforcement is just
The
too
code,
hard?
the code is not adequate, number one, because it's so old, so it doesn't have a lot of information to it. So what we're doing is we're kind of adopting Garrett's policies and procedures towards it, meaning the building officials from Curry County, because he had created a whole policies and procedures towards it that were very clear and more concise. But with that being said, until that's done, we'd have to go by the way that it is written right now, which makes it a very time-consuming and longer process than it should. But then also, the other side of it you have to look at is the city then has to create in the budget for these properties to, at some point, pay for the destruction if it gets to that point.
So is there are two pieces, obviously. One is the enforcement and the other is the actual wording of the language. So can I ask what point we are with the Garrett proposal or whatever that?
So they tabled it, I'm going to say 3 months ago, maybe a little bit more.
remember that.
They were a little worried about I think Council Pogwitz was more worried about the power that it was giving the building official, if I remember correctly, was kind of the wording.
Commissioner Head, which property is that?
It's in general, in the ordinance, the draft ordinance that was
Oh,
there.
I see.
So there was just a problem. He just didn't like the amount of power, because then anyone, basically he said that he felt like the building official could walk into any building and be like, oh, guess what? And he didn't like how that kind of read from, that was one of the biggest concerns that I remember, which I could see that when I was reading it. But
Valid.
yeah, but but then I also know the building officials, so then I kind of look at him and see that he would never do it, but I can see his other theory is you have another person that comes in and, is that type of person, which I
For sure,
agree.
close all the loopholes.
Well,
Yeah.
Does the procedure for this foreclosure or whatever it is involve other letters ahead of time?
Yeah,
So
there has to be a
it
certain
wouldn't be
amount of,
something where a person would just walk in and.
no, there has to be a certain amount of notifications. There has to be a certain amount of trying to find the person if they're not living here. I mean, there's a whole process and procedure for that.
So.
And then testing also on the properties, because if they have asbestos, we have to test for that first before we can do anything, and then it has to go to, EnviroClean, I think is the company, in order for them to take out what they can before it can be demolished. I talked about possibly, for the places that we could do it, burn to learn on certain nights and certain times. So that we have 2 different options, but there's a lot of different ways things that need to happen before we even get to that point.
So it looks like this is in process and it's kind of been, got a backwater. So maybe what we do is we recommend to the city council that this be dealt with. That's what we do. We recommend, is that right?
Sure, yeah.
So did, who did? Yeah,
Mhm.
so what, how would you like, if you were to make a recommendation to the city council, what would you say? It's like to wait to build a little fire under them.
Right, yeah. Well, I could think this out a little bit better, but, right now, I would simply say, let's create a list of properties that are safety hazards, derelict, maybe there already exists, a list. And think about ways to resolve this, whether it's to hold an auction.
Can't do
to
that
help
legally.
run-
We can't do that legally.
Can I suggest something really, really basic? So, so we don't have, to. Then the properties are all known, everybody knows, we don't have to list them, everybody knows what they are.
Mhm.
You just drive around, you can see.
Mhm.
So what if we recommend the city council, take action on derelict buildings?
Okay.
Mhm.
Is that simple and sweet?
That doesn't include
Simple, but it's not
habited
real
buildings.
Directed.
We can't direct, all we can do is recommend. But it is us saying something. That's all we can do.
Can we recommend a time frame? So you want to light a fire, we can say, hey, take action, but we're not recommending that this is an imminent problem. So if we just said, we'd like to see, we recommend X happen.
How would we recommend it to be put on the active agenda? Put on your active agenda.
We could offer to, if there's still any research outstanding, we could offer to help them move it forward. Mhm. And the biggest part for that I would say, it would be the budget portion, to be honest. Because I need to be able to budget that into our annual budget too. To pay for the dental, yeah, for all of that, for
Mhm.
everything from possible asbestos on the buildings, how much it'll cost to get rid of it, all the way through demolition, removal, all those things. So the city has to pay for those things up front before we can recoup the money.
Got it.
And only possibly recoup the money from.
Then you
people.
go after the landowner.
It would be going after the landowner, but if they, you can't bleed a rock. And so then the other
Mhm.
side would be to take over the property and sell it.
Mhm.
But then at that point, we're still looking at, selling it and having to wait time. So the city is always going to be out the physical cash first.
Mhm.
So in looking at, through all these documents to get ready for this meeting and to figure out what we're doing, we're just citizens. We're just gonna make I just want to make a recommendation. And
Mhm.
then let the city council and let the management of the city
Mhm.
listen to us or not, but I think we're all concerned about these buildings. Everybody in town is, so
I think if you guys want to, at the next meeting is I can put in the packet a copy of the last time that we looked at the code that we were proposing, and the changes that were made, and then that might help. I don't know, that's an option, that's the only thing I can think of, that might kind of help start that
As a
process.
refresher.
Yeah, and then that'll help to then know how long the process is to be able to do those things, and just for us to be able to go through, each step of it. Because there's also newspaper notifications, public notification, there's a lot of that type of stuff.
It's just,
too.
it hasn't been like
appreciate
a
that.
front burner project.
Mhm.
I think we need to know what the process is. And.
It's like a
and
2-year process right
understand
now
that.
for one house, I can tell you right now, yeah.
Do you have case studies that, examples?
I have the 3 that I've been working on that are still in progress.
So would it be, go ahead. Would it be prudent to, in the planning report, or if there was a planning commission report, to recommend that derelict buildings be addressed?
Well, that's why I think a good idea would be for you guys to look at the code first, to be honest, because then you would have an idea and be able to then present with them, say, this is how much it'll be per build. This will help them be able to know the process a little bit more, and maybe even have a little bit more meat behind it, because that's always been my thing, is they do come back at me with costs all the time too, and I only have so much time to be able to research all those things.
So it might help to come back to them with, let's look at this, these are our recommendations of what we see based upon a few different things, and then go from there. That would be my thought, because I know that's just the way that I'm thinking, just for process wise, because then everyone is informed, you guys are informed, and then you guys have a little bit more information, because I don't know who's seen that code since it's been written and all that fun stuff, or since the draft.
So if that was the kind of thing that citizens would do and gather information on, it's not something I would do. I'm booked basically in my life, but maybe somebody else is, or maybe somebody in the community would be. How about if we put it out to the community? If that's what we need to do, if that would help. I mean, if anybody's listening to this recording, maybe they'll step up and say, hey, you know, that really, I want those, you know, I want to deal with these buildings. I'll do some research. Contact the planning commission.
I like that idea. I think it can often be the catalyst for change. When the entire community, I believe that someone with the means might step up and say, I'll buy that property. I'll
Can't do anything. So that's the catch, is none of that stuff can be done legally. And so, because we have had one property in particular, multiple people have gone and offered cash for that property, and it's been turned down every single time because of multiple different reasons. So, I think you and I are probably looking about the same one. So, that is part of the thing, is a lot of times it is the sentimental that is there, unfortunately. And so they still own it legally. And so you have to really then at that point, that's when that process of a year and time and going through that process is what really then is the only way to do it when you have a property owner like that.
So to your knowledge, there is code that exists now.
Yep, that's in our code book from 1980. It's a 300-page document, but I will gladly give you the portion that pertains to abandoned and demolished buildings, or abandoned and, I don't remember, I think it actually is just demolished, but I'll have to look and see. And then I have the draft of the new code that was written too.
So we just,
Yeah, I had,
Commissioner Head?
Commissioner Head, I had two other issues apart.
I want to just tag on
okay.
this. I would like this to be noted that we recommend to the city council, recommend the city council deal with derelict property.
Abandoned and occupied, or just abandoned?
Derelict.
Derelict,
I mean, we're not experts.
that's
We're
right.
just saying, we're just citizens saying something. And you had more?
Yeah.
Commissioner Head?
One thing that, for the planning commission to look into, code pertaining to big box stores,
Mhm.
is that on the list? And
Yes.
then,
Would you add big box formula retailers? Is that what you're?
sure, yeah.
Big box formula retailers?
Other cities, other small towns have managed to, create similar codes, so I don't think it would be difficult to come up with the language. It would probably be a zoning issue, so that's more complicated. Also, I think that we should tighten up the language for the conditional use permit extension. I don't think it reflects the intent of that part of the code to prevent, extensions ad infinitum. I think maybe the language should be more strict to instead of saying that, having the word may in it, for example, having something that's more finite. So those are the two other things on my
Language
list.
for conditional use extensions.
Yeah.
Okay. Other,
I don't know where this would come into Commissioner Lowenthal. There's some sort of restrictions for multiplexes not being used as STRs. Other communities are now putting that into their code so that you can have long-term rentals. So apartment buildings don't become hotels.
are you talking about in residential or commercial or both?
Well, we don't have too many multiplexes in residential, but I was thinking of commercial or NMU. But we could look into that aspect of it.
So say that again shortly.
Communities are looking at not allowing multiplex units to become STRs.
Well, okay, so in our code for STRs, a dwelling unit, which is the only thing that can be a rental option, is defined in there as a lawfully established single unit that provides complete independent living facilities for one or more people, including permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, sanitation, and one cooking area. Dwelling unit includes a single-family dwelling and a factory-built or manufactured dwelling that bears a valid certification of compliance with applicable manufacturing standards. So we only put it in there for single-family dwellings.
And that's residential.
And that's, well, that is in this STR code, and that's all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, single-family dwellings that are allowed to be STR.
So, right,
That would cover that.
but we do have business licenses given to more than a single family dwelling. That is going to be, that'll be an STR, vacation rental.
And, yeah, but just in residential zones, but the other
Yeah,
zones,
no.
we can't stop. And so,
But I think that they're looking at this, well, I'll do some more research. In
Okay.
other zones, not just residential.
okay.
You want to look that up and bring it next, we're going to do this again. I want to do this all the time.
Right, because that's something we could get ahead of. Because if we want long-term housing, apartments, instead of being boutique hotels. And it's something the city council could look at.
Any other suggestions? Let's see, did I have one? I had one that was given to me by a couple of people. And the shortest I could say it was some process for council or planning commission oversight of development proposals that may conflict with comprehensive plan or other stated city goals. And I don't know how that works, but because I think there have been developments that may be in conflict with comprehensive plan or other stated goals.
So all those things go through Crystal, the bigger developments besides the single family dwelling. So, I know that she goes through a whole standard checklist, not a standard, but a big long list of stuff in order to make sure that that's goes through. So I can ask her for I know she goes by the code book, so whatever is listed in the code book, but I'm sure she has a little scenario.
Well, perhaps our comprehensive plan could be revisited then so that, I mean, is there any way to get to have more teeth, so to say?
I think looking at transparency and stuff, we don't know what's been approved.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Just to make sure the development matches up with the vision that's outlined in the comprehensive plan.
Yes,
Yeah.
Shayla's microphone.
yes, Shayla, you have
So your comprehensive plan is a document that sets out the goals of the city in regards to development. It's your actual zoning ordinance that implement the comprehensive plan. So if something is out of whack, you would need to first look at your zoning ordinances and make sure that they are carrying forward the goals of the plan. To say that developments in Port Orford are not carrying out the goals is essentially to say that there's something out of whack with our actual zoning ordinances, that they're not carrying out the goals. Because I'm not aware of developments that are happening outside of our zoning ordinances.
Thank you. So look at the zoning to see if it's reflecting the goals of the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
And I believe there's another document too. There's a shores or and I haven't got that far into it yet, but I think there's another document that's supposed to be a guiding document. But I'll try to find that. So look at the zoning to see if it reflects, if it follows the comprehensive plan. So I'm going to put that as a goal. Thank you.
Commissioner Thielen, this is Commissioner Head, what I said earlier about reviewing the 10MU probably falls under this big umbrella
I'm sorry, can you, I missed what you first
Yeah.
started saying.
of, what I said earlier about, looking into the 10MU and ensuring that what's happening in the 10MU is actually what we had envisioned when that zone was created, probably falls under the umbrella of ensure that the zoning reflects the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Yeah, so that could be part of this bigger sort of
Okay,
overhaul.
well, we've noted these six, there are 6 things we've noted
Mhm.
so far, and, yeah. Anything else? We probably should wrap the meeting up here pretty quick.
I have a comment that is, or a question that's unrelated to any of this. Is that the time
Are
or?
we, well, you have city planner comments, or
Okay.
planning
wait.
commissioner comments
Mhm,
will
yep.
be coming up. Let's move on to announcements and communications. City planner comments. City planner's not here. Would the assistant city planner like to make any comments?
Nothing, well, Joseph has been working with Crystal. Joseph and Crystal, you guys are going to April 25th, right?
Yes, the planning commissioner lunch is
Yes.
April 25th. It should be an all-day event.
Yeah.
It's up in Mandan.
So,
That's all I remember off the top of my head. I can give you more information if you need it.
yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I can. So they're, Crystal and Joseph are going to that in April, on April 25th.
I'm going to.
Oh, you are? Crystal's gonna go with him to kind of help him and introduce and stuff like that. So, she's been working with him pretty much daily, from going through different things. 'Cause we have a bunch right now of lot line investments and stuff. So those are the main things, just kind of throw them into the fire. Why not?
Great.
Port Orford style.
Yeah,
Welcome,
exactly.
Joseph, and thank you.
So,
We'll happily deal with your fires.
yeah, so going through that stuff, so that's kind of it. That's kind of the biggest thing right now, so.
Okay. Planning commissioner comments?
Yes,
Commissioner
Commissioner Head, did Bailey submit an application?
She did, however, we had talked about it, so we need to advertise for the open positions first before we can submit and take the app, well, I have it, before we can put it on the agenda, because we need to give people 30 days to be able to apply also.
Okay,
So that's, yeah, we had talked
Okay.
about that the other day.
When you
I-
say advertise, you're talking about the website, right?
Newspaper too, all of it, because we have to publish a newspaper, and then I have to get like a little certification letter from, sometimes Matt Hall and the other person too, it's a little letter that says, this was certified and it's notarized and stuff like that, so.
okay, thanks.
Other commissioner comments? Well, then I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Oh, public consideration, I'm sorry. My favorite people. Any public considerations? Then I call this meeting adjourned.